The ash warships appeared in Earth's sky without warning. They were massive, each one the size of a small moon, and they hung there like dark omens against the stars. The people of Earth looked up and knew, in that terrible moment, that their lives were about to change forever. The first attack came 3 hours later. 12 colony worlds burned in a single day. 8 billion human souls vanished in fire and ash. The ash had studied humanity for years through their broadcasts and transmissions. They had watched human art, listened to human music, and read human philosophy. Their conclusion was simple: humans were weak. They talked too much about peace and love. They cried at sad stories. They were prey, nothing more. The ash were the apex predators of the galaxy. For 3,000 years they had conquered every species they encountered. 17 civilizations had been completely destroyed. 40 more served them as slaves. Their philosophy was carved into every ship they built. The strong survive, the weak serve. There was no middle ground, no negotiation, no mercy. Admiral Sarah was on Mars when Earth's colonies died. She watched the feeds coming in from New Shanghai, from Europa Station. She watched her home world of Haven 7 disappear under nuclear fire. Her wife was there. Her 2 children were there. 30 million people were there. Now there was only silence and radiation. The Galactic Council held an emergency meeting. 47 species gathered to discuss what to do about the human situation. Most agreed that humanity would fall within a year. The ash had never lost a war. History showed that resistance was pointless. Some species argued for offering humans sanctuary, taking in refugees. Others argued that interfering would only bring the ash down on them as well. No one expected what happened next. Humanity fought back, not with superior weapons or better ships. Human technology was decades behind the ash. Human ships were smaller, slower, and weaker in every measurable way. But humans had one advantage that the ash never anticipated. They were very, very good at warfare. Humans had spent 10,000 years fighting each other. They had perfected every form of combat imaginable. They knew how to fight when outnumbered. They knew how to fight when. They knew how to turn weakness into strength and how to make the enemy's power work against them. Commander led the defense of Titan Station with 3 ships against a fleet of 30 ash cruisers. She couldn't win through direct combat, so she didn't try. Instead, she led the enemy fleet into Titan's rings, where their larger ships became trapped in the debris field. Then she used mining charges to create a chain reaction that destroyed half the enemy fleet. The other half retreated in confusion. Captain James Park defended New Beijing for 6 months with nothing but civilian cargo ships retrofitted with weapons. He couldn't match ash firepower, so he used guerrilla tactics instead. Hit-and-run attacks, ambushes in asteroid fields, fake distress signals that lured enemy ships into traps. The ash called him the Ghost because they could never predict where he would strike next. Admiral herself led the most desperate gambit of all. At the Battle of Station, she faced an ash armada that outnumbered her fleet 3-1. Every tactical simulation showed she would lose. So she stopped playing by the rules of traditional warfare. She ordered her entire fleet to accelerate to near-light speed and ram the enemy dreadnoughts. Her crew thought she was insane. Some refused the order, but activated the autopilot and gave every crew member a chance to evacuate to life pods. Then she stayed on the bridge of her flagship and watched the distance to the enemy shrink. 300 ships became missiles. The impact released energy equivalent to a small star going supernova. The Ash Forward Command was destroyed in 7 seconds. Their supreme war leader, their best strategists, their most powerful ships all gone. For the first time in 3,000 years, the Ash retreated from a battle. Admiral survived. Her ship's emergency pod saved her at the last second. She woke up in a field hospital 3 weeks later and learned that she had become a legend. Humanity called her the Angel of. The Ash called her the Demon of Fire. The war continued for 72 more years. It spread across 300 star systems. Entire planets became graveyards. Space was filled with debris from destroyed ships. Both sides bled and died and kept fighting because neither knew how to stop. The Ash learned to fear humanity. These prey animals fought with a savagery that shocked them. Humans would sacrifice everything for victory. They would turn their own ships into bombs. They would fight to the last person. They never surrendered, never begged for mercy, never showed weakness. But humanity was dying too. A third of the human population was gone. Entire generations grew up knowing only war. Children learned to shoot before they learned to read. The colonies that survived were armed fortresses. Earth itself was ringed with defense stations and minefields. The Galactic Council watched it all with growing horror. This wasn't a war anymore. It was mutual destruction. Both species were locked in a death spiral. The smart money was on the Ash, winning eventually through sheer numbers, but they would be so weakened that other species might finish them off. Then something happened that no one expected. Admiral, now in her 80s and serving as Earth's representative to the Galactic Council, made a proposal. She stood before the assembled species and spoke in a calm, clear voice. Humanity, she said, wanted to offer peace to the Ash. The chamber fell silent. Translation devices malfunctioned because they couldn't process what they were hearing. Peace. After 72 years of total war, after billions of dead, after the Ash had started the war with a genocidal first strike. The ambassador spoke first. You cannot be serious. The Ash do not negotiate. They conquer or they die. Then we will show them a third option, replied. The representative laughed. They will see this as weakness. They will attack with renewed strength. Let them see it however they wish, said. We are offering peace anyway. The counselor leaned forward, genuinely curious. Why? You are winning. Another decade and you could destroy them completely. Why offer mercy now? Admiral was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of 72 years of grief. Because I am tired of war. Because I have watched billions die and I cannot watch billions more die. Because at some point, someone has to choose to stop. And if the Ash cannot make that choice, then we will make it for them. They killed your family, the counselor said softly. Your wife, your children, you have every right to vengeance. I do, agreed. And that is exactly why we must choose forgiveness instead. Vengeance is easy. Any species can seek revenge. But choosing peace when you have been wronged, that requires real strength. That requires becoming something better than what hurt you. The Galactic Council voted. The measure passed, barely. Most species thought humanity was making a fatal mistake. A few thought humanity was insane. Only a handful understood what was really doing. The message was sent to the Ash on every frequency. It was simple and direct. Humanity offered an immediate ceasefire, peace negotiations, and a chance to end the war without conditions. No reparations demanded, no territory claimed, just peace. The Ash High Command received the message and spent 3 days trying to find the trap. There had to be a trap. Prey animals did not offer peace to predators. Weak species did not forgive strong species. This violated every law of nature the Ash understood. War Prime, who had ordered the bombardment of Haven 7 all those years ago, argued that it was an obvious deception. The humans were luring them into complacency before a final strike. The Ash should refuse and press their advantage. But the Ash were dying too. Their supply lines had collapsed. Famine was spreading through their colonies. An entire generation of their young had died in the war. The civilian population was on the edge of rebellion. The proud Ash Empire was crumbling from within. After a week of debate, the Ash High Command voted to accept the peace talks, not because they believed humanity's offer was genuine, but because they were desperate enough to take the risk. The location was chosen carefully. Haven 7, the dead world where the war began, where 30 million humans had died in nuclear fire, where Admiral's family had perished. It was a graveyard, a monument to the cost of war. And it was where humanity would try to do the impossible, make their greatest enemy into something else. The transport ships began their journey to Haven 7. The galaxy watched and waited. Every species had their sensors trained on that dead world, wanting to see what would happen when humanity and the Ash met face to face after 72 years of slaughter. No one knew it yet, but in 3 weeks, the universe itself would pause to watch what happened next. The conference chamber was built in the ruins of Haven 7's capital city. Through the transparent dome above, both delegations could see the scorched landscape, the skeletal remains of buildings, the frozen crater where a playground had once stood. 30 million ghosts watched from the ice. Admiral arrived first. She was 93 now, her hair white, her face lined with age and grief, but her eyes were clear and calm. She had spent the last 3 weeks preparing for this moment. She had visited the memorial gardens. She had spoken to survivors. She had read letters from the families of the dead, and she had made her peace with what she was about to do. The Ash delegation arrived an hour later. They came in full battle armor, weapons visible, an honor guard of 50 warriors surrounding them. Warprime led them, his 4 arms crossed over his chest in a gesture of dominance. He was expecting ambush, betrayal, or some clever human trap. What he got was Admiral standing alone, unarmed, offering a simple greeting in the Ash language. "Welcome, thank you for coming." Stopped, his translator worked perfectly, but the words made no sense. Thank you, for what? For killing billions of humans, for starting this war. The Galactic Council representatives took their seats around the chamber, 47 species watching, transmitting live to their. This was the most watched event in galactic history. Trillions of beings across the galaxy stopped what they were doing to see what humanity would do. Admiral sat across from. Between them was a simple table, nothing else. No weapons, no shields, just 2 old warriors who had spent their entire lives fighting each other. Spoke first. "I want to start by acknowledging the pain on both sides. 8 billion humans died in the first strike. Billions more died in the war that followed. My own family died here on this world when you ordered its bombardment." His expression did not change, but his body language shifted slightly. He was surprised she knew he had given that order specifically. "But billions of Ash died too," continued. "Your colonies burned just as ours did. Your children grew up without parents just as ours did. This war has both our species, and I believe it will scar us forever if we do not choose to stop." "Why did you attack?" asked suddenly. "When we struck first, you could have surrendered, most species do, but you fought back with a fury that shocked us. You turned your own people into weapons. You sacrificed everything for victory. Why?" Smiled sadly. "Because you threatened our survival, and when humans are threatened, we become dangerous. It is our nature. We have spent our entire history fighting each other, so we became very good at war, perhaps too good." "Then you understand strength," said. "You understand that the strong survive and the weak perish. This is the way of nature." "No," said quietly. "That is the way of animals. We are not animals. We are conscious beings capable of choice, and I choose to offer you peace." Leaned forward. "You cannot win this war, you know this. Your population is dying. Your resources are exhausted. This peace offer is surrender disguised as mercy." "If that is what you believe, then let us discuss terms," said. She pulled out a data tablet and slid it across the table. "This is what humanity offers." Read the document. His eyes widened. The chamber grew quiet as he read it again, certain he had misunderstood. The Galactic Council representatives leaned forward, trying to see what had shocked him. The terms were impossible. Humanity offered complete withdrawal from contested systems, mutual disarmament verification, a joint commission to investigate war crimes on both sides, including human crimes, and then the final clause, the one that made 3 hearts skip. Humanity offered to share their agricultural and medical technology with the Ash, freely, without conditions. They knew the Ash were starving. They knew their medical facilities were overwhelmed, and they were offering to help. "This is a trick," said, but his voice lacked conviction. "It is not," replied. "We are genuinely offering peace, and we are offering to help you rebuild." "Why?" The word came out as almost a plea. "Why would you help us after what we did?" Admiral stood up. She walked to the transparent dome and looked out at the frozen wasteland that had once been her home, followed her gaze, seeing the ruins, the memorials, the graves. "My wife was a teacher," said softly. "She taught history, and she always told her students that the hardest thing to do is forgive someone who has wronged you. It is easy to hate. It is easy to seek revenge. Those are natural reactions, but forgiveness, that requires you to be better than your pain. That requires you to choose hope over fear." She turned to face. Tears ran down her face, but her voice was steady. "You killed my family. You killed billions of my people, and I hate you for it. I will always hate you for it. But I also recognize that if we continue this war, we will both die. Every human, every Ash, all of us gone. And I refuse to let my children's children inherit a universe of death. So I choose forgiveness, not because you deserve it, but because we all deserve a chance to live, and peace is the only way to make that possible." The chamber was absolutely silent. Every being present felt the weight of words. The Galactic Council representatives sat frozen, unable to process what they were witnessing. This went against every political calculation, every strategic principle, every law of power they understood. Stared at for a long moment. He had spent his entire life believing in strength through domination. The Ash Way was simple: crush the weak, absorb their resources, move on to the next target. There was no room for mercy or compassion. Those were weaknesses that got species killed. But looking at this elderly human woman crying openly for her dead family while offering peace to their killers felt something he had never felt before. It was not fear. It was not respect. It was something else, something deeper. It was the realization that he did not understand humans at all. "We believed you were weak because you valued peace," he said slowly. "But you fought harder than any species we have ever faced. We believed you were prey animals because you spoke of love and compassion. But you turned yourselves into weapons without hesitation. Nothing about you makes sense." "We are contradictions," agreed. "We are capable of great violence and great kindness. We can destroy or we can create. And right now, right here, we choose to create. We choose peace. The question is, can you choose it too?" Looked around the chamber, at the council representatives watching with bated breath, at his own delegation, warriors who had known only conquest their entire lives, at the ruins visible through the dome, evidence of the terrible cost of war. And then he did something that had never been done in 3,000 years of Ash history. He removed his weapon's harness and placed it on the ground. His honor guard gasped. Several reached for their own weapons, thinking their leader had been mind-controlled or poisoned, but raised a hand to stop them. He began, then stopped. The Ash language did not have words for what he needed to say. Their culture had never needed those words, so he switched to human standards, speaking slowly, carefully. "I accept your offer, and I apologize for what we did, for the pain we caused. We were wrong." The moment those words left his mouth, every sensor in the galaxy registered an anomaly. For exactly 3.7 seconds, causality itself seemed to pause. Quantum entanglement patterns froze. Gravity waves stopped propagating. Every single monitoring device on every single world detected the same impossible event. The universe was paying attention. Then time resumed, but something fundamental had changed. Admiral crossed the space between them and extended her hand. Looked at it, uncertain, smiled. "It is a human gesture of peace. You grasp my hand and I grasp yours. It means we are no longer enemies." reached out with one of his 4 hands and gripped hers. It was awkward. Their physiologies were completely different, but the meaning was clear. The Galactic Council chamber erupted in chaos. Some species cheered, others protested. A few simply sat in stunned silence, but the ambassador, oldest and of the council, stood up and began to applaud. Slowly, others joined in. The sound grew until it filled the chamber. On Haven 7, standing in the ruins of a world that had died 72 years ago, a human and an ash shook hands. And the universe, which had seen countless wars and countless acts of violence, saw something it had rarely witnessed: genuine forgiveness offered freely to an undeserving enemy. The peace negotiations took 3 more weeks. The final treaty, called the Haven Accord, was signed by both species. The terms were everything had promised: withdrawal, disarmament verification, war crimes investigations, technology sharing, and a mutual commitment to rebuild. As the delegations prepared to leave Haven 7 approached one last time, "I do not understand you," he admitted. "Everything about humans confuses me. You fight like demons when threatened but offer mercy to those who wrong you. How can you be both?" Smiled. "Because we choose to be. That is what makes us human. We are not bound by instinct or tradition. We can be whatever we decide to be. And today, we decided to be better than our worst impulses." "I hope we can learn to do the same," said quietly. "You already have," replied. "You said words your species had never said before. You chose peace when your entire culture told you to choose war. That is the first step. Everything else will follow." The ships departed Haven 7, carrying the news back to their respective. The war was over. Peace had been achieved. And it had been achieved not through victory or surrender but through forgiveness. The galaxy struggled to process what had happened. Human forgiveness became a topic of intense study and debate. Philosophers wrote treatises trying to understand it. Scientists tried to quantify it. Politicians tried to replicate it. But the most profound impact was happening on the Ash. Ra was young for an Ash philosopher, only 2 centuries old. She had grown up during the war, had lost family members to human attacks, and had been trained from birth to hate the prey species that dared fight back. When news of the Haven Accord reached she was furious. The Ash had accepted peace from their enemies. They had apologized. It was a betrayal of everything their culture stood for. She planned to write a scathing critique of the peace treaty. She spent weeks researching humanity, looking for evidence that the peace offer was a deception. But the more she learned, the more confused she became. Humans had won decisive victories in the final years of the war. They had pushed the Ash back on every front. They could have pressed their advantage and destroyed the Ash completely. Instead, they offered peace. Admiral had lost her entire family to Ash attacks. She had every personal reason to seek revenge. Instead, she chose forgiveness. Humanity had demonstrated military superiority. They had proven they could fight and win. And then they had chosen not to finish the fight. Ra's critique transformed into something else entirely. She wrote a treatise called On the Strength of Mercy that challenged every fundamental assumption of Ash culture. She argued that humanity had demonstrated the ultimate form of power, the ability to destroy an enemy completely but choosing not to. The Ash had been thinking about strength incorrectly for 3,000 years. They believed strength meant conquest and domination. But true strength, Ra wrote, was the power to show mercy when you had none to gain. It was the ability to forgive when you had every right to seek vengeance. Humanity had shown this kind of strength, and in doing so, they had revealed the Ash as actually weak. The treatise spread through Ash society like wildfire. Young Ash, exhausted by generations of war, embraced it immediately. Elders resisted, arguing that Ra was advocating for cultural suicide, but the debate could not be stopped. Meanwhile, humanity followed through on every promise made in the Haven Accord. They shared agricultural technology, ending the Ash famine within 6 months. They shared medical advances, treating diseases that Ash doctors had given up on. They offered no judgments, demanded no gratitude, simply helped. War Prime, now called Peace Prime by his own people, resigned from military service. He dedicated his remaining years to teaching Ash children about the possibility of peace. He traveled to human worlds and spoke about his experiences. He became a living symbol of transformation. On Earth, Admiral received thousands of angry messages from humans who felt she had betrayed the memory of those who died in the war. How could she forgive the monsters who killed billions? How could she offer help to genocidal murderers? The families of Haven's 7 victims protested outside her home. Met with the protesters personally, she listened to their pain and anger, and then she explained her reasoning. "I cannot bring back the dead," she told them. "I cannot undo what was done, but I can choose what we do next. We can spend another 70 years killing Ash, and maybe we win, and maybe we all die instead. Or we can try something different. We can try to build a future where our children do not have to fight." "But they deserve punishment," one protester insisted. "They deserve to suffer as we suffered." "Perhaps they do," agreed. "But what does that punishment cost us? How many more humans must die to make the Ash pay for their crimes? How many more generations must grow up knowing only war? At some point, we have to choose to stop, and I chose to stop now rather than never." Not everyone was convinced, but over time, as the Ash genuinely changed, as peace held, as trade began and cultural exchange started, more humans came to accept's decision. Understanding did not come easily, but it came. The Galactic Council watched all of this with growing amazement. The collective, locked in a bitter 200-year war with the Empire, reached out to humanity. Could humans help mediate their conflict? Now retired from military service but still respected, agreed to try. The negotiations took 3 years. There were setbacks, moments when violence almost resumed, times when both sides walked away from the table, but persisted. She used the same approach she had used with the Ash, acknowledging pain, offering genuine solutions, and demonstrating that peace was possible. The accords were signed in 2231. Another century-long war ended through human mediation. Then they asked for help. Then the Pelian Confederation. Humanity became the galaxy's unexpected peacemakers, not because they were weak or naive, but because they had proven something crucial. They understood warfare deeply enough to appreciate peace properly. But something else was happening, something scientists struggled to explain. The 3.7-second anomaly detected during the Haven 7 Peace Conference had been thoroughly analyzed by every major research institution in the galaxy. The data was consistent across all measurements. For 3.7 seconds, every quantum sensor had detected the same impossible phenomenon. A coherent pattern in the quantum foam that suggested consciousness was affecting reality. Doctor, a human quantum physicist, led a team of scientists from 12 species to study the phenomenon. Their conclusion, published 5 years after the Peace Conference, was both revolutionary and controversial. Consciousness, they argued, was not separate from reality. At quantum levels, observation affected outcomes. And when a sufficient number of conscious beings focused attention on a single event, especially an unexpected event, it created a measurable disturbance in spacetime. Humanity's choice to forgive the Ash had been so unexpected, so contrary to every behavioral pattern the universe had observed in conscious beings, that it registered at a fundamental physical level. The universe had been surprised. The paper sparked intense debate. Some called it pseudoscience. Others saw profound implications. If consciousness could affect reality, even minutely, what did that mean for free will, determinism, and the nature of existence itself? But most people focused on a simpler interpretation. The universe was paying attention to what conscious beings did. And when those beings did something extraordinary, the universe noticed. 10 years after the Haven Accord, Admiral returned to Haven 7 for a memorial ceremony. She was 103 years old, frail but still sharp-minded. Now 140 accompanied her. They moved slowly through the ruins, two old warriors who had spent their lives fighting each other and then chose peace instead. The memorial they unveiled was simple but powerful. Two figures, one human and one ash, reaching toward each other. Not weapons in their hands, but open palms. The inscription below read, "Here, 30 million died. Here, two species chose to live. May the universe remember both and learn." Humans and ash attended the ceremony together. Young people from both species who had never known the war. They listened as and spoke about the past, about the terrible cost of conflict, about the harder choice to forgive. "We were enemies," said, her voice carrying across the assembled crowd. "We killed billions of each other. That is our history and we cannot change it, but history does not have to be destiny. We chose a different future, and that choice changed everything." Added his own thoughts in heavily accented human standard. "My people believed that strength meant conquest. We were wrong. True strength is the courage to admit you were wrong and change. Humanity taught us this. They did not defeat us. They transformed us." As the ceremony concluded, quantum sensors around Haven 7 detected another brief anomaly. It lasted only 1.2 seconds this time, but it was there. Scientists noted it in their records. Poets and philosophers discussed what it meant. The general consensus was that the universe was still watching, still paying attention to what humanity and their former enemies were doing, and perhaps, in some way beyond current understanding, approving. Admiral died peacefully in her sleep 2 years later. She was buried on Haven 7 in the same soil where her family had died. War Prime attended the funeral, along with representatives from 47 species. He gave the eulogy, speaking about the human who had shown his people that there was another way to be strong. "She defeated us without destroying us," said. "She punished us by showing us mercy. She proved that we were wrong about everything, and in doing so she saved both our species. I will miss her." The legacy of the Haven Accord spread far beyond humanity and the ash. Peace became possible in conflicts that had seemed eternal. Species that had been enemies found ways to talk to each other. Not everyone embraced peace. Some conflicts continued, but the existence of the Haven Accord proved that change was possible. Humanity continued to evolve. They remained capable warriors, never forgetting the lessons of the war. But they also became teachers of peace, mediators of conflicts, and advocates for forgiveness. It was a strange combination, warrior philosophers who understood both violence and mercy. The ash transformed even more dramatically. Within 2 generations, their culture had shifted from conquest-focused to exploration-focused. Young ash joined human crews on deep space missions. Ash artists collaborated with human musicians. The species that had once destroyed civilizations became partners in building new ones. Scientists continued studying the quantum anomalies. More events were detected over the years, always associated with moments of profound moral choice or unexpected compassion. A soldier who saved a child during a border skirmish. A colony that shared their supplies with starving refugees from an enemy species. Each time, the quantum foam rippled in ways that suggested consciousness was having an effect. Dr. now elderly herself, published a final paper before her retirement. She proposed that the universe might be evolving toward greater consciousness through the actions of conscious beings. When species made choices that expanded their moral circles, that chose compassion over cruelty, that selected peace over war, they were not just changing themselves. They were changing the fundamental structure of reality itself. It was a controversial idea, unprovable by current scientific methods. But it resonated with something deeper, something that billions of beings across the galaxy felt instinctively. That their choices mattered, not just for themselves, but for the universe as a whole. 50 years after the Haven Accord, a young human named, great-grandson of Admiral Sarah, joined the Galactic Peace Corps. He was assigned to mediate a dispute between two minor species in a remote sector. It was not a glamorous assignment, and the conflict was not widely known, but approached it with the same principles his great-grandmother had demonstrated. He listened to both sides. He acknowledged their pain. He offered genuine solutions. And when one side demanded revenge for past wrongs, he told them about Haven 7. He told them about 30 million dead, about 72 years of war, about two species that should have destroyed each other, and about one elderly woman who chose forgiveness when she had every right to choose vengeance. The universe is watching, told them, not knowing how literally true that statement might be. And it is waiting to see if we can be better than our worst impulses. I believe we can. The question is, do you? The negotiation took 6 months, but peace was achieved. Another small conflict ended. Another set of species chose to stop fighting. It was not a galaxy-changing event. Most people never heard about it. But the quantum sensors detected a brief anomaly. And somewhere, in ways that science could not yet explain, the universe noticed and remembered. Humanity and the Ash continued forward together into an uncertain future. They did not always agree. They argued about policy, about resources, about expansion routes. But they argued as partners now, not enemies. They had learned that the strongest power was not the power to destroy, but the power to forgive. And the universe, vast and ancient and strange, watched them with what might have been curiosity or hope, or perhaps something beyond human understanding entirely. The great experiment of consciousness continued, one choice at a time, one act of mercy at a time, one impossible forgiveness at a time. In the ruins of Haven 7, the memorial stood silent under alien stars, two figures reaching for each other, 30 million dead remembered, and a future built on the radical idea that yesterday's enemy could be tomorrow's friend, if both were brave enough to try.